Your Steve Jones Show podcast will start shortly. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Brewers Outlet, your beverage supermarket on Reagan Street in Sunbury.
Jeff, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Always nice to be with you, Steve, and definitely looking forward to next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with the Drew Hildebrandt situation. Cale Sanderson will not. He'll make a comment when he feels it's necessary to make a comment. Hildebrandt seated 16th, so if he wins in his opener against the wrestler from Lehigh, he will then get Nick Suriano from Michigan, the number 1 seed right out of the gate. What was your thought, A, on the seeding and also what Cale said about it?
Yeah, it is a little perplexing to me, Steve, how they're handling the seeding. And I just think you look at Drew Hildebrandt and Brady Berge as examples of how inconsistent they can be, because I think if you're looking at past success, right, Drew Hildebrandt should be seated higher. If you're saying the conference tournament isn't that important, overall in the seeding, then Drew Hildebrandt should be seated higher. If you're saying the conference tournament and the finish there is what's most important, then Brady Berge can't be a 16 seed. He finished third at the Big Ten tournament. So there's an inconsistency there, and it seems like Penn State, again, from the Penn State perspective, it feels like the Nittany Lions got the short end of the stick on both ends here with the Hildebrandt-Berge situation. And, yeah, I think, Drew, when you look at what he's achieved previously, I mean, he obviously had a poor weekend for whatever reason. He had a poor weekend at the Big Ten tournament, but I think you look at the consistency throughout the season, the only loss during the course of the season was by a riding time point to Suriano, beat everybody else he faced. It is a little perplexing to me in terms of, again, if the tournament is important or isn't important, fine, but make it consistent with, and it's not just Penn State. I mean, there's just other head scratchers here when you look at the seedings from one weight class to another. It seems like they're seeding more heavily on some things at some weight classes and differently at other weight classes, and I think that's the frustration. Again, not just for Cale Sanderson. I think it's the frustration for coaches in general in trying to figure out how this thing is managed, and I think also factors in with some of the medical forfeits that you're seeing throughout the postseason tournaments, where in some cases these kids don't seem to be getting penalized at all for the lower finish because it was medical forfeits, and then in other cases you're seeing guys that seem to be getting penalized for taking an early exit.
Well, this always comes back to what I'm talking about. I feel like in this era of analytics, we're losing people that have a feel for their respective sport. And I think that's where we're getting into trouble here. And I think I'm sensing in some ways, just a sense on my part, that there are people that are concerned about, that the people who are making decisions on seedings don't have the right feel for it. How about that?
Yeah, and it's one of those things, Steve. It comes down, very simply. Do you actually think Drew Hildebrandt isn't one of the best 12 wrestlers throughout the course of this season or in the country going into the postseason tournament? And I don't think there's anybody out there who doesn't think Drew Hildebrandt. Now, he may not finish in the top 12, but there's nobody out there that doesn't think Drew Hildebrandt is one of the top 12 wrestlers in the country. And I think I would argue the same thing with Brady Berge. I really thought when we were looking at it coming out of the Big Ten tournament, I really thought the debate on Hildebrandt and Berge was kind of where in that 9 to 12 range they would end up. And to see both of them get 16, which is just not a spot you want to be, where obviously you're opposite the number 1 seed then in the second round, almost out of the gate. It's just a tough situation. But again, it's what Penn State's been dealt, and Penn State is not unique in this. Again, there's a lot of other head scratchers, I think, when it comes to the way this year's tournament is being seeded.
champions at the Big Ten. If you were to tell me going in that there'd be 4 champions, my assumption would be, well, yeah, okay, Aaron Brooks is one of them. Who are the other 3? When you look back at his performance in the championship, which, let's face it, I can stay right. He'll avenge it in Detroit. But what wasn't quite there this time, and also credit to what was there for the other guy.
Yeah, I think 2 things, Steve. One is I think you hit the nail on the head. Hats off to Miles Amin. I mean, this is an elite wrestler, right? You're talking about an Olympic bronze medalist. His only loss in the Olympic tournament was to some guy named David Taylor. So he's not a bad competitor. And he's been around a little while. He's got 3 years of collegiate experience over Aaron Brooks. So these are 2 really elite wrestlers. And I do think Miles Amin had a specific strategy and executed it very well this go-around with Brooks. I also did think Aaron Brooks, Steve, just kind of allowed Amin and the way it was being officiated to take him out of his game, and that's very atypical for Aaron. We've seen him make adjustments to tough calls and tough opponents, guys that have a specific strategy, and usually we see him by the 3rd period kind of solve whatever it is that's being thrown his way and figure it out and prevail. And I thought, especially in the overtime period, Steve, he is usually really good, Aaron is, at just letting the match develop, like not forcing stuff. And it seemed to me that he almost got a little panicky and tried to force some things that weren't there out of the gate, and that's just, again, not something we're used to seeing. So I'll chalk it up to just a bit of an off day, and I was fortunate enough to ride back in the van with Aaron and Greg Kirkley coming back to the hotel before we headed out from Nebraska, and I can tell you Aaron's head is in a very good place. He is very much looking forward to having the opportunity to wrestle Amin again and just to wrestle again. And I think the NCAA tournament cannot get here soon enough for Aaron Brooks.
So everyone learns something out of every experience, pro and con. There's probably some things he learned that happened to be good out of that match. What do you think he learned that he can apply as he now goes through step by step in Detroit?
Yeah, I think that the 2 biggest things, Steve, is just, stay on your game. I think he allowed himself to get taken out of his game a little bit by both the way the bout was being officiated and by Amin and what he was trying to do. And if Aaron just stays with with what he knows how to do well, he's going to be just fine. And I think he knows that. Kind of talking some things through on the way back. I don't think he needs the coaches or anybody to tell him what adjustments need to be made. I think he already knows what he's going to do a little differently. But I think the other thing is just forcing the pressure again a little more. I think he gave Amin a little bit more of a chance to get some rest opportunities in that 3rd period, and I think it allowed Amin to kind of get that explosion for the couple of takedowns that he needed. I think if Brooks can just keep the pressure on him from the start and keep it on in the early going of that 3rd period, that Brooks will be the guy that is able to get those late takedowns if needed.
All right, so let's get to another part too, the scoring of it. If you wrestle in a opening round and versus somebody gets a bye and you win, guy that wrestled gets a point or a part of a point. Okay, so in some ways, you get a bonus because you don't have to wrestle. That's one less. It's like playing on Wednesday night in the Big Ten tournament, but at the same time, the team gets penalized partially because you don't get the point for automatically moving through. Is this something you need to consider and think about? Is that something you need to think about and consider, especially when you have team races that are so tight?
Yeah, I think it is, Steve, and what I would like to see, and I understand the thinking of, hey, let's reward these top 2 seeds at each weight class with the bye. But the issue is exactly that. You had a Penn State team that had 6 kids with first-round buys, all of whom are capable, no guarantees obviously, but capable of getting bonus points, and that's what you're missing out on when you're not able to compete in that opening round. And it's why I think a team like Penn State can be more dangerous at the NCAA tournament is, again, those top-end guys, instead of getting the first-round buys, they have first-round opportunities to not just advance, but, again, pick up those bonus points. And I think, Penn State will be looking at all of those kids that ended up in the top 3 at the Big Tens to get bonus points in those first couple of rounds at the NCAA tournament. And, there was a long period of time when you had more pigtail bouts in some of the weight classes where it was at the NCAA tournament where it was just a random draw. And, you could have a 1 seed have a first-round matchup or 8 seed. I mean, it was just a random draw. And I really think that that's what they should do at the Big Ten tournament with those buys. It's just make it random and, do the computer-generated random selections so that you at least have the opportunity to have some of those guys be able to pick up some bonus points for you in that first round at the Big Tens.
Nick Lee continues to be a rock. Carter Starachi, a rock. Roman Bravo Young, oh yeah, the Big Ten is just another step, whatever, and then waltzes through. It's amazing how that works. I mean, you have 4 champions out of the thing. All right, so besides Aaron, who's to me is a co-favorite. That's just my assessment.
Yeah.
Give me a couple of guys that you think, based on seeding, based on matchup, based on bracket, that might be able to pick up some key points, even though they might not be a champion in the event.
Yeah, I think Brady Berge is the guy I'm kind of looking at as almost the bellwether wrestler here for Penn State in terms of the national championship here, because Brady's a guy that I think, could go even 0-2 at the national tournament, but I think is certainly capable of, getting into the top 4 or 5 when it's all said and done as well. And I think, he's a guy, he got his first collegiate pin in the Big Ten tournament, so I'm not sure that we're necessarily looking for pins from him. But I do, with the way he's moving right now, I do think he can get some significant bonus points in those early rounds. And listen, I think Bo Bartlett, with his style, again, he's capable of getting some bonus points in those early rounds. And Drew Hildebrandt, Steve, to me is kind of the biggest question mark right now for me in terms of what to expect. I'm not sure where his confidence is right at the moment coming out of the Big Ten tournament. I know where it should be, but I'm not sure where it is. And that's just such a deep weight class. And, there's not a lot of difference, even with Nick Soriano at the top, going all the way down to, now probably the 15, 16 seeds. There's just not a lot of separation, I think, among those guys. And so, it's going to come down to who's on and who can make a move or two. Obviously, Drew Hildebrandt is capable of being a top 3 or 4 guy at the national tournament. I think they need him on the podium here to feel comfortable with the national championship prospects.
Yeah, and that'll be big because you got to find. I mean, we've talked about this how many times, Jeff. I need at this level to find bonus points. When you look at Iowa and Michigan, do they have guys that, in your opinion, well, first of all, it's the health of the Iowa guys to begin with. Let's start with that. What's the health of the Iowa guys? And then the next part is, do they have guys that you think, which of the 3 has the capability of bonus points of the 3? If you look at Penn State, Iowa, Michigan, which one does?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, I think Penn State is the team that you're expecting to get the most bonus points at the national tournament. I think Michigan would be the next in line just because of how veteran their team is. And a guy like Logan Massa, who's capable of the big throws. Obviously, Mason Paris is a bonus point machine with the exception of when he faces Gable Steveson. But, I mean, and now Greg Kirkfleet this year. But, I mean, he has been dominating everybody else that he faces in the weight class. And listen, I think up and down that lineup, Michigan has guys that are capable of getting bonus points. You know, a lot of the Iowa guys, even when they're healthy and on, aren't huge bonus point guys. Now, guys like Jaden Ironman and Michael Kemmer, when healthy, are. I think that the health there is a real concern, Steve. I'm just not sure where Ironman is right now with what apparently is his knee that's bothering him. And obviously Michael Kemmer's shoulder, I don't know how well that's going to hold up. And it's just such a loaded weight class at 74 that, I think he's going to have a tough time even finishing in the top 3 here at the national tournament.
One final question, because I know we're going to get you back on Wednesday. Could this be as competitive an NCAA championship because of the added years that people have because of COVID, Olympic, passes from years gone by, because of the age of the wrestlers?
Yeah, I really think that is the case, Steve. When you look at the individual weight classes, to me, I think the team race, my expectation going in is it's going to come down to Penn State and Michigan, and I think Penn State's in a pretty good position going into the national tournament. But from an individual weight class standpoint, Steve, we have some weight classes that are just absolutely loaded. I mean, you look at 184. 133, the depth there. I mean, I know Dayton Fitz and Roman Bravo Young have kind of separated from the field there, and then Austin DeSanto, I think, is kind of in a class by himself at the 3 spot. But man, the overall caliber of talent up and down the lineup and throughout the weight classes, I do think, because of all the things you just mentioned, I think it is as strong and as deep a field overall for the NCAA tournament as we've ever seen.
Jeff, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Words I really never thought I'd say to you. Enjoy Detroit.
I never thought I'd have that said to me either.
Words that just don't go together. All right.
No, that's for sure.
Jeff, thanks. I appreciate you very much, my friend.
Thanks, Steve. And have some fun tonight. Looking forward to that matchup with Purdue.